Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. This is City of Port Orchard regularly scheduled council meeting for January 27th. And I will call that meeting to order. And would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you and good evening. We'll go ahead and start with the citizens' comment portion of the beginning of the meeting. And Mr. Baker has signed up, so would you please come up and give us your comments?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Dave Baker, along with my wife Susan Becker. We're the owners of Sue's Lavender and Fresh Juice Bar located inside the Port Orchard Public Market. The reason I stand here this evening, we're asking for the city's help, and I'd like to advance an idea. One of our things that we hear constantly from our customers is extreme lack of parking, especially for the handicapped and the elderly within inside the Port Orchard. Granted, there is parking up on the hills, but like for my father who is invalid, it's hard to get up and down the hills. What we like to propose is if we can't have a parking garage per se somewhere, how about parking lots that are up on the hills, some of the land, and run a shuttle bus. Shuttles constantly goes from your parking lots down to central drop-off points on Long Bay Street. We're here, we invested our money in downtown Port Orchard because we believe in downtown Port Orchard. I've lived here since 1980. I want to see downtown get back to the way it was, get back up to that thriving. So once again, we're asking for your help, and the way you can help us as a business owners is help us promote our business. Right now, we keep running against stringent regulations as to what we can put inside our windows, A-boards out on the sidewalks, flags that say we're open or whatnot. We like at least to review the regulations that are out there, hopefully loosen them up a little bit, so we can start advertising. Get the citizens back down to Port Orchard, get them down to shopping. If we get them there, it helps me as a business owner. It's going to help the city of Port Orchard. More tax money, more coming into the city coffers. We'd like this to work together as a partnership. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Baker, with your permission, I'm going to turn your contact information over to, or I'll get some contact information if I could, either a phone number or a website, because Mr. Bond is working on we're going to be working on a sign ordinance, and so your input would be really helpful early on that process. And if you get on the list, and he'll contact you whenever there's a meeting or there's any testimony needed.
I'm always available. If you need my phone number right now,
if you could put it on that card right there, where it wouldn't hurt to talk to other folks in the market, because you're in there, and the surrounding area, because we'll be also contacting, or I will, Port Orchard Bay Street Association and all those kind of folks, because we need to really have a sign ordinance that works for everyone.
Right.
And is not so restrictive that you can't advertise. So I think it's doable, but I think we need a lot of participation from those that it means the most to.
As you know, I'm a member of the POBSA right now, so I have a lot of contacts. I'll start getting hold of my fellow business owners, and hopefully we'll get together as a team.
Yes, I think that's the best plan to move forward on that particular item that you mentioned. On the parking, I think we're all aware of the parking, and we're looking. I think everybody, that's still a problem that needs to be solved. So thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir. If you'd come up.
My name's Aaron Passo. I actually came more interested in the pedestrian pathway, but I do love Port Orchard.
Could you pull that up just a little bit? And then
I do love Port Orchard. I think we ought to do a little Robin from Bremerton, put some signs up over in Bremerton and say, this way to the ferry to Port Orchard, the fun city, this way to Port Orchard, where the fun's happening. Let's rob these guys a little bit. And some more signs on the ferry. I ride the ferry every day. They say stuff about Bremerton I don't see much about Port Orchard. Let's advertise on the ferry boats.
Very good comments,
Yeah.
yes. And we're doing a wayfinding sign, and that's one of our hottest subject is, if you don't know there's a ferry down there, how are you ever going to go get on it, you know? So,
Well, the Bremerton end is the one that's going to bring them here.
right, okay, thank you. Anyone else? Please.
It's less than a minute. Good evening. Nick Whittleton. I am asking the council to reject business item C on tonight's agenda and cancel the contract regarding the water sewer gap analysis. This is due to what should be a lack of confidence in the product being developed. The water gap analysis lists $3,700,000 of work that was listed on the 2011 water capital investment list that was funded by an increase of between $14 and $20 bi-monthly over the last 4 years. By the way, this was almost doubling the rates from 2011. All in all, this is not acceptable engineering and questions the credibility of the entire analysis. I understand we were looking at a fragile infrastructure that needs work and maintenance. We need to look at the real gaps in the system and not fund a shopping list. I'm going to give this to Brandy, and it lists the items, the 3.7 million in items from this gap analysis and compares them with the item numbers from the 2011 analysis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Raise your hand.
When is it appropriate to address Bay Street pedestrian?
This would be your best chance before the discussion, and I don't think you used your full 3 minutes, so yes. Otherwise, you have to wait till the end of the meeting, and then it would be, you know, if it's a,
That's fine. I would like to see amended to have Universal Field Services start immediately on the acquisition. That's about it.
okay, that's your,
I own one of the subject properties, so I am an interested party. I'm going to be getting some shoulder surgery, but I'd like to get my stuff moved and get all this stuff done before I do that. I'm going to put it off. I'm putting it off, but I'm in constant pain. I'd like to get this done.
okay. So your vote is, your encouragement would be for the council to
Yeah,
move
let's
forward.
get this over. Uncertainty is killing me. I can't make any decisions. I've got tenants there. They would like to make a decision. We'd like to get something done.
Put something, yeah.
And if we're gonna go ahead with it, let's get the ball on the road here so I can get this done. You guys get that done, we get a pedestrian pathway done. Everybody goes away happy, except for one guy. And I would suggest, I don't know if it's possible to realign, we got the guy in the corner there, everybody knows about him, to move that wellhead down into a vault so that we can bring the street over where that wellhead is and put that wellhead below ground in a vault. You guys can clip that corner there a little bit better. He can stay there, you can move your pathway, you can get your 14 feet.
That's, okay, thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Please.
Stand to the side because I can't see over that.
Yes.
My name is Susan Baker. Along with my husband David, we own Sue's Lavender and Fresh Juice Bar. My concern, and I've heard it several times, is the parking behind the public market and the other buildings there, the condition, the potholes. I, again, brought my father-in-law down, and first of all, the lack of handicap is terrible. And he's very handicapped, and just trying to get from the car into the building, through the potholes and that, he needed four-wheel drive on his walker. I'm afraid somebody's gonna fall and get hurt. It just is, getting really bad back there. I called the county today to ask to see who was responsible for that, and they said the city of Port Orchard owned it, and they would be responsible for any repairs to the parking lot and drive back through there. So that's my issue, is we need somebody to get back there and fix that. It's just, you know, we want people to come down and enjoy it, and I've heard comments from from customers and that, well, you know, I about fell, or you have to walk through the puddles because they fill up, and that's my comment.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing no one else, then we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Oh, does somebody have?
Just talking.
Oh, okay. Approval of the agenda, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any other discussion, changes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Okay, we're moving on to consent agenda items. And what's your
Move to
pleasure?
approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Although, any other discussion or any comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Thank you. There isn't any presentations or public hearing scheduled for tonight, so we'll move right on to business item A, and that is approval of change order number 2 to contract number 08813 with Universal Field Services for the Bay Street Pedestrian Path Project continuation. And Mr. Dorsey, could you bring us up to speed on this particular subject?
Yes. On November 13th, 2013, the Port Orchard City Council approved Universal Field Services Contract 08813 for the 2014 Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Real Estate Acquisition Services in the amount of $207,000, $207,461.09. This federalized activity was subsequently and immediately placed on hold. On February 11, 2014, Council approved Universal Field Services Contract 028-14 for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway right-of-way precursor established to assist the Council in their overall project decision-making process using non-federal funding. Given the City Council's decision to move forward with the federalized project, a time-only extension of Contract 088-13 from December 31st, 2014 to December 31st, 2019 via change order number 1 was approved on November 25th, 2014. Change order number 2 deals with the contract amount as follows. Contract reduction based on WashDOT internal audit of overhead rates. That reduces $15,480.86 from the original $207,000 figure. Then the contract increase based upon the revised scope that came out of this last year's activity, an addition of $6,523.59. So the overall net contract is a decrease of $8,957.27 to Universal's 2013 contract. Staff recommends that the Council authorize the Mayor to execute change order number 2 and WashDOT supplemental agreement number 2 with Universal Field Services for a net decrease of $8,957.27 to contract 08813 for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project Real Estate Acquisition Services. And I'd like to say, go Hawks.
You wanted to be the first.
I want to be the first and only.
Okay. Yes.
I move to
Brennan.
authorize the mayor to execute change order number 2 and WashDOT supplemental agreement number 2 with Universal Field Services, Inc. for a net decrease of $8,957.27 to contract number 088-13 for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project Real Estate Acquisition Services.
Second?
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and we're opening the floor for discussion.
I just appreciate that it's costing less.
Again, it was primarily WashDOT did local programs did an internal audit of all the real estate acquisition service firms on their list. And it was basically a reduction, I think, from a 68% overhead to a 48% overhead. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Ashby.
and this is directed to Mr. Dorsey for an answer and then to the rest of the council for discussion. But it appears to me that our agenda items A and B are for the pedestrian path. It's moving forward with the pedestrian path, the right-of-way acquisition, and then with normals and to do some other things. So my question is, once again, I want to make the statement that my position is I support the pedestrian path. I think it will be a great asset to the city, and I have absolutely no problem and look forward to the pedestrian path. However, I have concerns of moving forward without knowing what the true expenses are going to be and a funding plan for the path. So my question, or one comment, is that our work study last Tuesday, the number for construction was brought forward at $3 million. Is that an accurate number? Is that a pretty fair estimate of what it's going to cost us? And then does the council have any idea what our funding plan is going to be for that $3 million?
So I can only answer the first question. So the original engineer's estimate from the overall design that was accomplished with the original $300,000 came in about $3.6 million. We know that we've constructed segments 2, 5, and this summer 4 with non-federal funds. And so when you take the original 3.6, take away some decreases of work that had been accomplished, throwing in some potential additional costs with going back to the 14-foot wide pathways with some additional cantilevering, just from a checks and balances value engineering standpoint, I think we're still just in that same general ballpark of requesting around $3 million. But until the right-of-way certification is complete, the city's unable to even apply for construction funding. Until the right-of-way is complete, the plans cannot be revised or updated because we wouldn't know what we're revising or updating to. And so depending on whether there's 4 homes gone or 5 homes gone, or as Mr. Pasau said, the curve gets realigned onto the Well 10 project, which is something that we have looked at as an alternative. We don't know what the final plan is, so we can't do a final estimate. So all I can say is, the city embarked on this project in 2005. We're now in 2015 with a right-of-way acquisition phase in front of us that's funded, and $300 and some odd dollars expended, $325,000 or so expended to date. And the decision to move ahead.
Just to interject quickly, just so I can understand, you think the $3 million is an estimate until we can get more detail?
Until the...
Does that include demolition cost of the homes that we're going to acquire?
Well, again, that wasn't included in the original estimate.
That was my question.
Right, yeah. But knowing, again, that we had we had about $800,000 spent with, constructed with state funding between segments 2, 4, and 5. All I can say at this point is it's going to be an engineer's guesstimate until we actually have the right-of-way plan complete, and then have the plans actually revised in an up-to-date real-life estimate based on that. Then we'll know what we'd be applying for in a federal cycle, which would be in 2016, we'd be applying for funding in the 2017, 18, 19, 20, that next 4-year funding cycle, because you remember PSRC went to a 4-year funding cycle.
And then my question to council is, are we comfortable moving forward without a funding plan, or do we have a funding plan?
Yes, in my mind, the numbers we saw, if we had to fully fund it ourselves, if the $3 million is accurate, wasn't the 400. We realized it was about 330. Mm-hmm. As we heard, the funding opportunities for pedestrian pathways are much greater than the options were going to be presented for Tremont. I mean, that's the pool of dollars, that there's less competition, and the dollar amounts we're looking for are much smaller than the 17 million we're looking for at Tremont. In my mind, I think we're gonna have to have some skin in the game, you know. And as we've built these other segments, even when we've gotten state money, we've had to throw in $150,000 on each. And I think realistically, of that 330, we're probably going to have to come up with a third of that. But I think logically, it's a logical source, a way to spend REIT money. We've got emission tax money that's supposed to be for recreational use. I think that pedestrian path is a wonderful recreation opportunity for our community. So I'm comfortable. As far as the demolition, I mean, once again, I think that makes our grant opportunities stack up better because we're the environmental pluses that, you know, will score well, I think, there. So, well, it is, we don't have, you know, every dollar accounted for. We're still at engineers' estimates. We don't have finalized plans. So I'm comfortable with what I see, but I can only speak for myself.
Mr. Chang?
I apologize. I probably should have said this before we started, but I am a WashDOT employee. WashDOT is a large organization. I have no personal knowledge of this matter as a result of my employment. I have not spoken with anyone at DOT about this matter, and I will not benefit financially, and I am able to make a decision on the merits. I do not intend to recuse myself unless any council member or any member of the public feels that I should. In that case, I will be happy to step aside. Seeing no head nodding. Okay. The only thing I would add to what Rob and Beck have said is that at this point, we don't even know that there's going to be demolition of 4 residential units.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr.
One
Clausen?
thing that I would add to it, and I agree with Rob's comments, is unlike Tremont, this project can be done in phases. So, you know, we can do, as we have done so far, a piece here and a piece there as we can secure the funding to do it. So I'm like Rob, I'm comfortable with moving forward.
Any other comments? Any other
I
discussion?
guess the Tremont or Bay Street is constructible in phases. They would have to be phases that DOT or local programs determines as, a phase that still has a link. And so we have to make sure that even though the actual pathway may end at some point, there's still a pedestrian pathway that it transitions to, and then the ultimate clock is still ticking to complete. I think it's, 2023, so.
Normally, at this point, we just have the comments at the beginning, and then this is the time the council gets to deliberate before their action's taken. So normally we don't take any comments at this point, unless it's a public hearing, at which time we'll announce it as a public hearing. So, any other comments? No. All right. Seeing no other comments, we're going to be voting on 7A, approval of change order number 2 to contract number 08813. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Let the record show that there is 1 in opposition, and that motion carries. Okay. We'll move on now to item 7B, approval of change order number 6 to contract number 07109 with NL Olson and Associates. Mr. Dorsey, could you tell us about this one, please?
Mayor, one moment, please. I would
Yes.
like to recuse myself because I have a family member that works for this firm.
All right, thank you. And we'll come and get you as soon as this particular subject has been exhausted. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Dorsey,
Thank you.
please tell us.
On October 27, 2010, the City of Port Orchard entered into a contract with NL Olson Associates via Resolution 101-09 for the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project, known at that time as the Mosquito Fleet Trail, for the development of the final plan specs and estimate, or PS&E. Subsequently, over years, several change orders have been issued, with the most recent change order 6 for $5,000 being associated with the council's recent decision to pursue the Pathway project with property acquisitions and relocations. This activity must be completed prior to obligating additional right-of-way funding. Staff recommends authorization for the mayor to execute Change Order 6 and WashDOT Supplement Agreement 6 to contract 07109 with Olson Associates, Inc. for the continuation of the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project, thereby extending the contract completion date to December 31st, 2015, and adding $5,000 for right-of-way plan revisions.
Questions? Questions from Mr. Dorsey, Mr. Patonsu?
Move to authorize the mayor to execute change order number 6 to WashDOT supplemental agreement number 6 to contract number 071-09 with NL Olson and Associates, Inc. for the continuation of the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project, thereby extending the contract completion date to December 31st, 2015, and adding $5,000 for right-of-way plan revisions.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll open the floor for discussions or comments. Yes, Ms. Ashby.
I just want to understand what NL Olson and Associates is going to be doing. Are they surveying? Are they, actually giving us the revision we need for the 14 down to 11 and all of that?
The original plan that was developed and the right-of-way plan that evolved from that came through a public process, alternatives, presentations to council. Different alternatives were chosen, for example, where the bridge was going to cross and so forth. So the final plans and ultimately the right-of-way plan was based on that design. With the decision to move ahead with the relocations, the 5 relocations and purchases, that in essence changes the right-of-way plan. And so those 4 or 5 homes, from a right-of-way plan, well, actually the right-of-way plan will depict all 5 because you would have to move forward with just the plan. So that the plan has to be modified for that particular reason. And then there were 2 or 3 encroachments that showed up in the original plan because the state had never certified that right-of-way plan. That, like the Marley apartment, that they're going to have to probably purchase that 20 feet that's in the right-of-way. We can't go by that with this encroachment. So there are things that need to be resolved. And so the right-of-way plan needs to be revised to reflect all those encroachments and cleaning those up. And so that's what this additional activity is for. And this activity, along with the Universal Field Services update of their relocation plan and their administrative offer summary list that was in their original 2013 contract, needs to be updated. And so those 2 pieces need to be completed before I can submit to WashDOT for obligation of the funding, which has to occur before June 1st, 2015.
But this has nothing to do with redesign or anything like that. It's just the right-of-way piece.
This is revising the right-of-way plan so that Universal can adjust their AOS and relocation plan, and then we can get those 2 pieces have to occur before we can obligate the $1.5 million.
Thank you.
Mr. Chang.
I should have mentioned in the last item that it would pertain to this one too, which also involves WashDOT. I am still a WashDOT employee. It's a large organization, and I do not benefit financially from this. I do not think I need to recuse myself unless any member of the council or public feels that I should. Then I would be happy to step aside.
Looks like you have the same answer.
Okay.
All right, any other comments then or questions from Mr. Dorsey? Okay, seeing none, we're going to be voting on item 7B, approval of change order number 6 to contract 07109 with NL Olson and Associates. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? That motion carries. Thank you. And we'll have our member come back in. There she is. There.
I guess it's warmer in there than it is up there.
Okay, we're going to move on to business item 7C, approval of change order number 3 to contract number 03314. And Mr. Dorsey, please tell us about this one.
At the December 16, 2014 work study session, KZ Isaacson and Associates presented the 2014 water sewer gap analysis to the Port Orchard City Council. At the conclusion of the presentation, a request was made by Council to continue the discussion into 2015. Therefore, change order number 2 was issued immediately so that the contract time could be extended to May 1st, 2015, prior to the current contract expiration date of December 31st, 2014. This evening's action will provide the additional $8,700 needed for the continuation of the analysis in 2015 and will require a budget amendment to the approved 2015 budget. Staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute change order number 3 to contract 033-14 in an amount not to exceed $8,700 for the continuation of the water sewer gap analysis. Please note that of the $37,900 KD Isaacson contract total in 2014, $10,804 was unspent. The budget associated with the additional Isaacson 2015 work activity totals $19,500. Therefore, the difference between the additional work cost and the unspent 2014 budget is the change order 3 value of $8,700 before you tonight. Please note, though, that the 2015 budget amendment will need to reflect the entire $19,500 as unallocated costs in 2015.
Okay. Council, do you have, would you like to comment or do you have a motion, Mr. Patonsu?
I move to authorize the mayor to execute change order number 3 to contract number 033-14 in amount not to exceed $8,700 for the continuation of the water sewer gap analysis.
We have a motion and a second. We'll open the floor for discussions and comments. Discussion? Mr. Chang.
I'd just like to comment that I was intrigued by some of the comments from the public, but I think that's directed more at the results of the completed analysis. So I'm going to vote for this because I think it's incomplete and we need the information to make the decision about the rates.
And Mr. Dorsey, isn't the additional work, from what we got, our discussion was we wanted some additional water categories and we wanted some additional analysis related to consumption, so that there was
Billing
work,
structure.
yeah, billing structure, work we wanted beyond what was presented to us. And so we're asking for more and we need to pay for the additional work.
Correct. If you recall, and I guess I take a bit of exception to the comments earlier. KD Isaacson is the most recognized financial utility analyst in the state. She is on the Public Works Board. This is what she does. And so she prepared the initial cut, and as we know, we internally did our previous rate studies, and as I tried to explain to Mr. Whittleton previously, that was an internal review of our operations and our capital on a plan that hadn't been financially constrained. This work product supersedes what was done before. It's taking a fresh look at our entire operations in a much more detailed look. It's looking at our capital projects. And in fact, when we went to utility committee and then revised it and came back, we've made a number of adjustments to the capital projects, tried to really allocate correctly, growth rates and what dollars will be in the future, the Well 10 project. So what was done in 2011, quite honestly, this is superseding all that. This is saying this is 2015. We're moving towards a constrained 2016 comprehensive plan. And the council requested, not only having gone back and adjusted this more than once, but some additional work to even look deeper so that we truly know what our reality is. And as Councilman Chang points out, this will all be coming back with this additional effort to answer everybody's questions so that a decision can be made in 2015.
I think it's important too to recognize in 2011, we had an operating deficiency, which we can't have. We had to bring the utility into the black. We also funded a what was our 6-year capital plan at that time. We have started to move forward on well 10. And if you notice the difference in those rates, the water rate isn't moving up a whole lot in the short run because we've already addressed a lot of those capital needs in that water rate adjustment. It's the sewer rate that we haven't done a whole lot with, where we haven't done a whole lot to our capital or funded it, and that's the one that's jumping up dramatically.
And I think it's important to point out that, again, we did that initial study with a 6-year plan amortized over a 20-year period that then was reduced and then ramped up over a 3-year period. And so that number wasn't even addressing the need. It was ramping up to try to deal with operations, but it was never was never capturing funding to take care of capital projects.
I'd forgotten that piece. That's right. We did stretch the amortization much longer than we should have, just because we were in the midst.
we could afford.
Yeah, well, we were in the midst of an economic downturn, and we were trying to do the right thing for our citizens. We felt at the time.
Mr. Mayor?
Right. Yes.
I will be
Ms. Ashby.
I will be supporting additional work by Katie Isaacson because I think that we do need to do something about our rate structure. I think it needs to be revised, or at least it needs a evaluation of our rate structure. And so I think that's important, and I know that we're looking a little bit out of the box on our stormwater too. So before we actually make decisions that will have a financial impact on all of our residents, I think it behooves us to do our due diligence on the front side. And so I support this a great deal.
Okay, is there any other?
Ditto. I agree with Beck.
Likewise.
Then I presume that we're ready to vote on C, approval of change order number 3 to contract number 03314. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Let the record show that motion carried unanimously. All right. We'll move on to the council committees. Mr. Clausen, Finance Committee, got anything for us tonight?
Well, the agenda says it's to be determined, but I thought we had one scheduled.
Thought we did too.
Let me get back to you. I'll check my calendar. Well, I don't have my calendar.
All
Yes,
right,
I do.
well, we'll Utility and Sewer Advisory, Mr. Clausen.
Haven't had a meeting since our last council meeting. Our next utilities meeting is February 13th. Sewer advisory is February 18th.
Okay, thank you. Public Property Committee, Mr. Cartwright.
Our next meeting is February 9th, followed by the Economic Development and Tourism on April 9th. At 8:30 is the Public Property, and at 10 is Economic right here in the chambers. Sorry, Beck, I took your thunder.
That's okay.
Lodging Tax Advisory Committee.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Chimes and Lights, well, wait a minute here. Oh, here. I'm sorry, I passed right over Beck, and so
That's okay.
your turn. Economic Development and Tourism.
Again, that'll be February 9th, which is a Monday at 10 o'clock here in the chambers.
Okay. All right, Chimes and Lights, Ms. Lucarelli.
Nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Is there anything about, any discussion about waterfront plan at this meeting?
No, there's not.
Okay. Outside agency committee reports, and normally Beck or Ms. Ashby, do you have the report there?
Yes, neither KRCC or PSRC has met since our last council meeting.
Okay, very good. Mr. Cartwright, anything? No? Mr. Patonsu? Nothing. Any others that I might have missed that attended any meetings? Okay. We'll move on to report of the mayor. Don't have any direct report to you. I went to the Martin Luther King celebration and represented our city. It was a great celebration in Silverdale, and I believe that this county really does do a lot of the things that Martin Luther King Jr. stood for as far as helping and working in the community. So I was very proud of Kitsap County in general and Port Orchard particularly. As I told you guys, the South Kitsap ROTC, Junior ROTC, were working, and I got to take pictures with them. I got back just in time when they were going to start having their pizza party down at the park. And so I'll be doing a special mayor's report about youth making a difference in South Kitsap, and they'll be poster children, poster young people for that report. So there'll be a lot more about that. So we'll move on. Report of department heads. Mr. Dorsey, do you have a report for us?
Yeah, I might as well. So about a week and a half ago, I pleasantly surprised by the content of a 2-day workshop put on by Department of Transportation on, I guess, accommodation workshop for pedestrians. Extremely informative. I found out at that meeting, and I kind of mentioned at the work study, that in 1995, I believe, when ADA, which was subsequent to the Rehabilitation Act, the cities and counties had 2 years to develop a transition plan. Needless to say, the city does not have a transition plan, but we are working on a transition plan. I mention this for two reasons. One is, I think next year in the 2016 budget, my plan is to contact the current firm that was doing our pavement management system, because there appears to be some overlap. Because really, it's basically inventorying and assessing all of the sidewalks and curb ramps and signals and things. So I think it seems like that would be something that could be added to that, and then develop the transition plan so that we're in compliance. As it specifically relates to work we're doing right now, I'll be working on an amendment to the Bethel 2015 pavement repairs. Basically, what I learned at that workshop is if you improve a crosswalk, the improvement needs to extend then to the curb ramps, that they be brought up to current standards, because it's discriminatory to not improve for the pedestrians crossing, then you're doing the same thing for the vehicles using the crosswalk. So we've assessed an as-built, the main area that we're doing in 2015, which is the Bethel-Lund intersection, and we've determined that only those 4 crosswalks may need to be modified, probably need to be modified, and the pedestrian heads may need to be relocated. They don't need to be brought up to current standards with Audible and the APS, what they call APS, because that comes with the signal. Once you start changing the signals, and that triggers all that. Locations need to be adjusted. So that'll be an addendum 1 to that activity. And we've determined that we do not need to, though, change any of the multitude of crosswalks that are going parallel to the roads, like crossing in front of Puerto Vallarta or Rite Aid or any of those, because our work, that's outside of our scope. We're adjacent to it, but we're not actually improving that crosswalk. So there'll be some additional work. My hope, obviously, is still that we're going to be able to fund it within the funding that we've allocated, but we will be touching those 4 crosswalks due to the Rehabilitation Act. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Martin is off tonight. Mr. Bond is off tonight. City Attorney Morris, do you have anything for us? City Clerk. How about
Yes, I have a couple things, 2 things. So one, I just wanted to update the council on the lodging tax reporting process. So I'm not sure if you're aware, in 2013, there was some legislation changed on the requirements of how lodging tax could be used, as well as the reporting requirements. So what they had did is, when they changed the law in 2013, they allowed local jurisdictions to not report anything to them in 2014. And so now that we're approaching 2015, the reporting requirements are now back in place.
And when they put that system back in place, they revamped the whole reporting process. So I've looked into that. I've made contact to all of the recipients of the 2014 lodging tax, and so we're working together to come with a viable reporting system. They need to report some things to me, and then once I get those, I report them to the state. So I think all in all, it'll be pretty good. I think the purpose of the change was to force the hoteliers and the event organizers to work together. And I think if we can get that happening, I think we'll be surprised to see the numbers that come in and hopefully increase our tourism here in Port Orchard. And then the other thing I have is the mayor has appointed a small committee of the 125th anniversary. We met last week, yesterday. It's kind of all blending together. And the chair of that committee is Sharon King with Fathoms of Fun. And we have set a date of Saturday, September 5th. So we're in the early stages of planning. We're still continuing to invite more members on the board. I think there's a couple members that's going to be reaching out. We'll be meeting in a couple weeks. And I will update you as I know more.
So Randy, I got a question for you. The minutes in this packet here, it's the best I've ever seen. Amazing.
Thank you.
How good they look.
I was actually
Efficient
researching something, and I found it a couple weeks ago, and I thought, you know what, this is really cool. It's a
Yeah.
compromise between action and summary, and I thought it would be good, so I'd give it a shot and see what you guys thought. So I'm glad you like it.
No, it looks great.
I think it looks very professional, and I really appreciate the typeface change as well. That really makes it very
follow.
legible. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You know, and thank you for finding it and bringing it to me actually it's been a month ago. And she wondered if she could try it, and Rhiannon was all in favor. And between the two, actually the three gals down there, you put it together, very great, savings in time, hours and hours from the old way of doing it.
Every 4 hours, well, let's say every 2 hours of a council meeting, it takes 4 to 6 hours to draft the minutes. And so by doing this, we were able to save about 2 hours off of a regular meeting.
And then we still have the recording, so if you want to know word verbatim, we still have that available also. And once again, I'd like to remind anybody out there that doesn't have access to their computer but wants a DVD, is it a DVD or is it a CD, whatever?
Compact disc. same
Yeah,
thing,
compact
CD.
disc. Of our meetings, if you ask us, we'll give it to you. It's downstairs, usually 3 days, no later than 3 days. A lot of times it's down there within 2 days of our council meetings, and so you can have it, you can take it home, you can put it on your TV, or you can put it on whatever. So that's always available. And thank you for your coming up with those minutes. They really look nice, I agree. And thank you guys for noticing it. Appreciate that. So, all right, now we're at the last public comment period. So if anyone would like to raise their hand, come up and make a public comment, this is the time to do it. All right, please.
But I was going to say, when you guys were speaking about the pedestrian thing, I have lived there for a long time. We've found veterans home people that have been knocked over that railing by cars. There's absolutely nowhere for anybody to safely walk between our place and the apartments or on that curve. And also, I'd like to ask Mr. Dorsey, any progress on fixing the sinkhole there before a truck falls into the bay? And I have an issue with my parking area where it meets the seawall. We're unsure who owns that now, so. I know there's getting to be quite a dip there again, so. Anyhow, it's a public safety matter as far as I'm concerned.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Please.
I had two things that I've been thinking about. Number one, I'm finding the pathway to be very hurtful to a number of people in our community. And I think it all stems back to a council that in 2005 didn't realize what going into this federal funded money was going to cost in the long run. And I would sure hope that in future, when you go after federal funding, you know what it's going to cost you, because I truly believe that it gets to the point where you can't say no. And to me, it should have been a no, because you're hurting people that have contributed to this community and forcing them out of their homes when a number of them did not want to be forced out at the start. And now you've just worn them down over time, and they're having to give up their homes because they're tired of fighting the city. And that's all because federal money was taken in and not knowing the consequences of the action. It seems like everything is backwards. You can't do this until you do that, but you accept the money up front and then you're stuck. And another thing I'm going to talk about is, for the last 2 raises in the water rates, I've come and I've brought a chart and I've shown what the people at the bottom and the people at the top pay. And if you go by gallons of usage, the people at the top are paying about half of what the people at the bottom per gallon, which is not, I know how you do it, but it's still, they're getting to use a lot more water, even though their bill is larger. They're using more water and not having to pay for that water like the people at the bottom. And so I want you to think about it again. I'm not sure I'm going to sit at the computer and go clear up to 500,000 gallons again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Jerry, I believe what we're investigating is actual water usage as well, part of the rate structure.
I realize that, but it's the way the gallons were figured. Those people at the very top per gallon were paying about $2.53, I think, per gallon, where those at the very bottom were paying $5 a gallon. And I know it's not a lot, but when you're at the bottom, you know that they're getting to use. When I was taught 30 years ago, I was a teacher, PUD every other year takes every 4th grader in this county and tells them to start conserving, because even though we have more water than they do in Arizona and other places, we have to conserve that water. But the way it is, the people at the top really don't, other than if they want their bill, but they're using more and paying less. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? No? All right. Thank you.
An item for the good of the order when you have that.
Okay. We don't have an executive session, so we are at the good of the order. Mr. Chang, please bring your
I just
item
wanted to let everyone know, in case you hadn't heard, that the Kitsap County Department of Emergency Management has said that PSNS and the Navy will be conducting an exercise at the shipyard tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. The exercise will be testing response to a fire on board a vessel in dry dock at the shipyard. The exercise will involve fire alarms on the base that may startle some folks living nearby. Central Kitsap Fire, South Kitsap Fire, and Harrison Medical Center are among those participating in the exercise. There's a good chance that many of us on this side of the water may hear what's going on over there at 4 a.m. So if you hear it, don't be alarmed. It's an exercise.
Thank you, Fred. And you more than likely will. I hear it from my house. The ooga horns and everything.
I know, but why they chose 4 a.m.?
I'm speculating here, but after 27 years in the Navy, they want it to be as realistic as possible. And at the worst time, in the dead of night, is when usually emergencies happen. So I think they wanted it to be a very accurate drill. So they picked in the middle of the night.
Or do it before normal work hours.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pedestrians running around there. So that could be the reason. I have no idea what the real reason is. So, all right, is there anything else for the good of the order? If there's no objections, then we'll stand adjourned at 8:05.